you're doing, you got to stop your party attitude, and you've got to join us on Super Tuesday. Okay? It is colossal. We've got 11 states up for grabs. Bernie Sanders must win at least 4 of them. Okay? We're going to break down all of it for you guys, starting at least at 6 o'clock Eastern. We might even start the show earlier than that. I'll tell you about that later. But we're going to start it then, and the polls start closing at 7 p.m. Eastern. We will be on the air analyzing immediately. Hillary Clinton will certainly win a lot of those states. Bernie Sanders will win some of those states. Which states does Bernie Sanders have to win? It will be colossal. And it's all
It'll be tremendous.
It'll be fantastic. It'll make your head spin. Okay? So all of that is on tytnetwork.com/live. You should never miss us during election day of any sort, let alone the debates, the town halls, etc. And if you're a progressive, where else are you going to go anyway? MSNBC? Well, we do have a story about that a little bit later in this first hour. And look, honestly, part of the drama is if Bernie Sanders loses Massachusetts, it might be over tomorrow night. So it is that dramatic. That's absolutely real, okay? On the other hand, if he wins Massachusetts, Colorado, and Minnesota, he's the favorite. So it doesn't get any bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot miss this coverage. And obviously no one will be more excited than us, and nobody will give you the truth as much as we do. They'll all, talk around it and not get to the core of the issue here one way or another. TYTnetwork.com/live. All right, later in this program, the Klan makes a comeback, but then they get their ass kicked a little bit as well. So Donald Trump and the Klan there's a lot of Klan news today.
There is a lot of KKK news.
That's right. And there's actually a lot of fighting news. Some of it is intermingled with the Klan. Then in the second hour, were the Oscars too liberal or were they too black? Yes, we'll have a little bit of a funeral for MSNBC later in this hour. And finally, whatever you're doing, again, do not miss the Donald Trump and Chris Christie video from today. That's one of my favorite videos, perhaps of all time. I wish it was louder so we can get it on the soundboard.
I know.
Okay. But if you love politics, you'll love that video. That's coming up in just a little bit.
Yes.
So, Casper, go.
All right. We begin the hour with a discussion of Bernie Sanders and how he's changed his messaging so far in the campaign. Early on in Bernie Sanders' presidential run, he was very clear about the fact that he had no interest in attacking frontrunner Hillary Clinton. Well, it seems that as the primaries go on, Bernie Sanders has changed his messaging a little bit, if you ask me. He's become a little more aggressive in attacking Hillary when it comes to the substance, not when it comes to nonsense. Now, there are 3 clips that we're going to show you that kind of demonstrate exactly what I'm talking about. Let's take a look at the first clip.
Kids 17 to 20 graduated high school who are white, 33%, unemployed, Latino, 36%, African American, 51%. So I've got a radical idea. Instead of locking up our kids, let's invest in jobs and education. Instead of having more people in jail than any other country, let's have the best educated population on earth.
Okay, can I just jump in there for a second, Anna? So that one is much more subtle. The other 2 will be far more clear. Now, it's part of the boilerplate of what Bernie Sanders does talking about criminal justice reform. But the subtle digs at Hillary Clinton there is, he's got a record on mass incarceration that is not very good. And a lot of African American critics of Hillary Clinton have been talking about that recently. So it's partly how he brings that up and saying, hey, you know what? Maybe instead of locking them up, we should have education as well. Second, very, very subtle dig is that Hillary Clinton has some private prisons that are donating to her campaign. So he said, you really want somebody that has been part of this system doing all those things. Now, if you're not knee deep in politics, you probably miss those 2 issues in regards to this, but you probably like that statement anyway.
Right.
It resonates with everybody. That's part of why he's been saying it for a long time.
It's interesting because I commend Bernie Sanders for wanting to run a clean race and a clean campaign that doesn't attack Hillary Clinton needlessly, that doesn't, hit below the belt. I think that that's actually an admirable part of his campaign. But But at the same time, I want him to be more aggressive and a little more concise and clear when it comes to his messaging on how different he is from Hillary Clinton, right? Because I feel like Hillary Clinton's messaging has been clear, and she's very, very successful in putting misinformation out there that goes unchallenged by the media. So an example of that is this whole notion of Bernie Sanders wanting to repeal the Affordable Care Act. He has no interest in repealing the Affordable Care Act. And unfortunately, the media will not question her or challenge her when she spreads that lie, right? And so in order for him to mitigate the damage that's being caused not only by the Hillary campaign, but by the press not doing its job, he needs to be more aggressive in his messaging.
Yeah, I wouldn't have any problem bringing up that she's taking money from those groups. I wouldn't have any problem bringing up her past record. That's what primaries are for. Let's hash it out. These are not personal attacks. These are attacks about her record and the people she's taking money from. Okay, now, he is going to get more aggressive on the other counts. He's not going full jank here. I don't think that's flattering to me. But but at least he is finally going a little bit more aggressive and not just, here's my policy positions, you like, you don't like.
Exactly. So then in the next clip, he talks about Goldman Sachs and the influence Goldman Sachs has on certain politicians, including Hillary Clinton. Take a look.
Every politician in the history of the world, Republican, Democrat, whatever, has always said, oh, yes, I'm getting millions and millions of dollars for powerful special interests from the drug companies, from the fossil fuel industry, from Wall Street. But it doesn't impact me. They're just throwing that money around for the fun of it. I don't believe that. And in addition, Secretary Clinton has received hundreds of thousands of dollars for speeches, several speeches, each for $200,000, that she gave to groups like Goldman Sachs. Now, if you get paid $225,000 for one speech, it must have been a fantastic speech. So I think that Secretary Clinton should share that fantastic speech with the whole country.
That was wonderfully sarcastic.
It was so good. And look, before we get to the substance, I just can't get over how real Bernie Sanders is in terms of his body language, right?
Yes.
Like, there's no this when he's talking, but there's a lot of this, right? There's a lot of, like, let me tell you what's really going on. And you can tell he's speaking off the cuff. You can tell it's genuine and sincere. I think that goes a long way with young voters especially. So I love seeing that.
Yeah, all the politicians are taught, hey, don't point your finger because that looks accusatory and it's too aggressive. Don't do this, don't do that. That's why they do this thing that no human being actually does. You've never seen anyone who does this unless they were taught to do it by a consultant.
That actually seems more authoritative, if you ask me. Like, if someone's talking to me by doing that hand gesture, I get a little...
What is this hand gesture?
I don't know.
It does not exist among Homo sapiens, okay? It only exists among robots, either corporate robots or political robots. Anyway, you can tell that's why they're like, Washington is flummoxed. Like, why is Bernie Sanders popular with the young? Because it's obvious he's not coached, he's authentic. Nobody talks like this and is slouched over as a politician because their consultant told him. Right? Obviously he didn't. He's genuine. But look, these attacks now, they've got to be even more aggressive. And I know that Bernie's such a nice guy, he has trouble doing it, and that's part of his appeal, and I don't want to take that away from him. But it's about time. Yes, she got paid $225,000 for every speech she gave at Goldman Sachs. She gave 3 of those. She made $11 million, not campaign money, into her own pocket from all the speeches she gave after she left the State Department. Should you call that out? Of course you should call that out. And, so now before he'd be like, hey, look, these things influence you. That's why I want to get money out of politics. Now he's saying, people who telling you I took all this money and it didn't influence me, come on. Who believes that?
Yeah. Again, I love that he's getting a little more aggressive. I don't think that he's aggressive enough to mitigate the damage that's being done to his campaign by both Hillary's campaign and the press unchallenging her, untruths. Okay? So the last one is my favorite because it has to do with foreign policy. Now, Bernie Sanders is not the strongest on foreign policy. We've been very honest about that. However, there's this notion that Hillary Clinton is much better at foreign policy or making foreign policy decisions because she's more experienced. But that's not necessarily true given her record, and he calls her out on that. Take a look.
And there is another area where we have strong disagreements, and that is the most important foreign policy debate to have taken place in this country in the last 20 years. Obviously, it had to do with Iraq. Now, I listened as a member of the House, representative of the House, very closely to what President Bush and Vice President Cheney and all the others were saying about the need to invade Iraq. I listened closely and I concluded that they were not telling the truth. Not only did I vote against the war, I helped lead the opposition against the war. Secretary Clinton heard the same information that I did. She voted for the war.
So, first of all, you guys should check out TYT Politics. There's a lot more of these clips. Jordan and Eric are on the road. There are field correspondents covering the campaign, doing an amazing job getting this footage and so many more interviews. That's youtube.com/TYT Politics. This is shot by them. And so on this ground, all this talk of experience, again, Anna's right. The media doesn't call it out. Okay, you have all this experience. To what end? And that experience led you to make what decisions? Oh, right, the wrong decisions. Now, people pretend Bernie Sanders doesn't have experience. The guy's been doing this for 40 years. So it's not, what do you mean he doesn't have experience? Yes, he was not Secretary of State. Well, I've never been Secretary of State, but I know foreign policy really well, right? It doesn't mean like if you're not Secretary of State, oh, what? What's foreign policy? Never heard of it. Bernie has been in Congress for all this time and been making the right decisions instead of the wrong decisions. That would lead me to believe he's got better experience.
Yeah, so to add to that, I think look, I don't think that Bernie Sanders is necessarily worse in foreign policy. I think that he's actually better in foreign policy when you actually read what his policies are, right, or what he would do. What hurts him is during the debates, for some reason, whenever questions of foreign policy come up, he gets a little stumped, right? And he knows his stuff. Like, you read his policies, it's very perfectly outlined what he would do in the Middle East, right? Or what he wouldn't do in the Middle East, which is, in my opinion, more important. But the questions come up, and he's not as confident as Hillary is when answering those questions. So I think that hurts him. But all you need to do is look into what he wouldn't do and how he wouldn't be influenced by certain forces that influence political decisions when it comes to foreign policy. He's not going to allow weapons manufacturers or the military-industrial complex to influence his decision-making when it comes to the Middle East. And I think that's the most important thing.
Even when I see their pictures, Hillary Clinton looks like she's from the Empire. And Bernie Sanders, he looks like he's definitely from Rebel headquarters.
I actually was shocked to find out what his net worth is. I thought that he was like any other politician. He's got millions of dollars, right? Of course, he's a politician. He's been a politician all his life. And then you find out that he has maybe $500,000 max? That's insane.
Okay, to give you a sense, like, you might think, wait, $500,000 is a lot.
It is a lot, but not for a politician.
No. The Clintons have over $100 million. Okay, and they never ran a business. It's not like they came from running a business or this or that. No, they made that because of politics. Speeches and books that they wrote, all related to politics, they made $100 million. That's a nice industry, right? From being in power that long. Mm-hmm. So now, by the way, the other day, Hillary Clinton's campaign unleashed a new attack on Bernie Sanders, saying, how can he handle finance for America? He still owes $65,000 on a credit card. Like, I don't know if you know this, but you're actually helping, right? Because a lot of people go, hey, I owe a lot of money on a credit card too. And this guy's not one of those millionaires and billionaires like almost everyone else in Congress.
Yes.
And so he had 40 years to make a killing. He chose not to. Right? That's why that line about those fantastic speeches at Goldman Sachs was so great. Man, they paid you a lot of money for those speeches. They must be awfully good, right? Of course they're paying you the money to influence you, not because you gave a great speech. If it was so great, share it with everybody. Past time that Bernie Sanders said that. And finally, he mentioned there in that same speech, hey, listen, if you go for a whole loaf, maybe in a worst case scenario, you get half a loaf. If you go for half a loaf from the beginning, all you get is crumbs. Damn.
Yes.
Okay, give me more of that.
He says Americans deserve a whole loaf, and I love that.
You know what we need? We need a whole loaf of aggressive progressive from Bernie Sanders. We're just getting started.
Exactly. All right, let's have a little bit of fun. Marco Rubio is now delving knee-deep into lowbrow politics, and he's doing so by attacking Trump the same way that Trump would attack him. This next clip shows you exactly what I'm talking about. Here's Rubio hitting Trump below the belt.
So just give me one more minute because we got to have fun with it. He likes to go on Twitter. So he now says, well, first of all, he says that I'm sweating all the time. It's hot in here. Am I sweating now? No. All right. He doesn't sweat. He doesn't sweat because his pores are clogged from the spray tan that he uses. Donald is not going to make America great. He's going to make America orange. The next thing, now, the other thing he says, he's always calling me Little Marco. And I'll admit, the guy, he's taller than me, he's like 6'2", which is why I don't understand why his hands are the size of someone who's 5'2". Have you seen his hands? They're like this. And you know what they say about men with small hands? You can't trust them. You can't trust them. You can't trust them. All right? You can't trust them.
Republicans are so unfunny. Like, even though I hate Trump and I want to hear people making fun of him, like, I watch that and I'm just like, man, your comedic timing is so off. Like, everything
That's funny because I thought that was the funniest that Republicans ever been. Intentionally, at least, not unintentionally. Unintentionally, they're hilarious with a lot of this.
Give me a break.
Oh, Jeb, we miss you already. So, look, they programmed the robot with humor.
Yeah.
And yes, that can be rough at times.
Yeah. Right now, I do funny. Trump has small hands. You know what they say about small hands. You can't trust them.
So, they changed the programming on the computer a little while back. The computer had a glitch. They took it in, took the virus out, and debugged it a little bit, and then they programmed it to attack in the last debate. Now they've hired a couple of, I'm sure, comedic consultants. How's that for a job? A Republican comedic consultant. There's like two of them on the planet, probably. Anyway, so they hired those guys. They've reprogrammed the computer with jokes, right?
Mm-hmm.
He does a spray tan. Hey, but nonetheless, hey, there you go, you knucklehead. You should have been attacking him for a long time ago, 8 months ago, 6 months ago, certainly 3 months ago, when he had a giant lead, and you guys sat there and attacked each other and never went after him. And yes, if you get in the mud with a pig's always going to win.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, Rubio's in the mud, and yes, Trump's a pig, and yes, all those things. But he wasn't going to win doing what he was doing, right? I mean, Trump had already dragged all of them in the mud and was drowning them in the mud.
Yeah.
It's about time they fought back.
Well, then they underestimated him as they were drowning in that mud, right? And that was their biggest downfall, not taking him seriously. Honestly, I didn't take him seriously in the beginning. But once you see that he's dominating in the polls, it's time to attack Trump. But more importantly, what I got from that clip was just how incredibly different Democrats and Republicans are when it comes to these primaries, right? We just did a long video about how Bernie Sanders has changed his messaging to be a little more aggressive in attacking Hillary. And he's attacking her relationship with private prisons, mass incarceration, her relationship with Goldman Sachs, very substantive things. And then you watch the attacks by Republicans, many of which don't even have real policy ideas, and they're like, he's got small hands.
Tiny dick. Okay. All right. No, it is amazing, though.
Yeah.
I mean, like, people are having a real discussion about if Bernie Sanders is going too far by saying Hillary Clinton only wants to give you half a loaf. Wow, whoop-de-doo. And it's not a reference to anything else. It's not like the Republicans where half a loaf would mean like half a cock or something, right? So, and he's saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't have given those speeches to Goldman Sachs. Meanwhile, over on the Republican side, they're like, oh, small penis, orange, got you. Oh, yeah, what happened now, Trump?
It's probably really bad when you get your campaign playbook and your plan of attack from Austin Powers.
What's the other thing that scares you? Carnies. What? Circus folk. Nomads, you know. Smell like cabbage. Small hands.
I think that's how a lot of the audience was afterwards.
Oh man, fun stuff. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, the video you've all been waiting for: Trump and Christie.
Don't miss it, dude. And if you're not getting the whole show, because the audio podcast oftentimes is just 2 segments of the show, TYTnetwork.com/join. Get the full show. You'll love it. TYTnetwork.com/join. Christie and Trump in the wonderfully embarrassing video when we come back.
A group of
Young Turks. 1,000 stories to get to. Let me read some quick tweets for you guys. Nick Broccolo writes in, I really enjoy listening to Jenk and Anna on the Young Turks. They always put me in a good mood. Thank you, Nick. Much appreciated. Gabby Marita writes in, going to have to miss Jenk and Anna covering Super Tuesday. Sorry, guys. Going to be busy voting for Bernie in Massachusetts. Gabby, bless your heart. Go ahead and do that. But, we're here after the polls close. So, and we'll have all the polls closing and all the results for you the minute it happens. We get it from every source out there. Like ABC News, for example, bless their hearts, only does ABC News reporting.
Right.
We can collect everyone's report.
Exactly.
Okay. Sloopy writes in, Sloopy Drew, if Bernie's digs weren't subtle, he'd be sweeping tomorrow. You can bet the GOP won't be subtle with their digs against Hillary. I hear you on that, and look, I hope that Bernie's not making the same mistake the Republicans did in waiting too long to attack Donald Trump. So we'll see partly tomorrow night. Don't miss it. And then March 8th and March 15th are also giant election nights. Okay, Joshua S. Logan writes in, hashtag TYT Live, that's how you talk to us. Honestly, I could watch CNN 24 hours straight and not get a fraction of the substance on TYT politics. Thank you. You both for here and for youtube.com/TYT politics. Finally, for today writes in, they got, Jebs, give me a break on the soundboard, and the universe is back in balance. We got two of them. So, yes, we have, give me a break. And we also have,
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.
What about please clap? Like, we gotta get that on there, too.
Okay.
Like, after you make a terrible joke.
Yes.
Please clap.
All right. Awesome. Let's do it.
All right. Chris Christie has officially endorsed Donald Trump as the Republican candidate. And recently, during a rally, Trump was caught on a hot mic telling Chris Christie something that raised a few eyebrows. Take a look.
Oh, that's so embarrassing. Oh, my God, that's so embarrassing.
What just happened? It's incredible, especially because Chris Christie likes to be boastful about how he's this tough guy. And to watch him be told, get on the plane, go home, it's just so incredibly embarrassing.
That's like De Niro in Heat. Clean up, go home. Clean up, go home,
Yeah.
right? And so Christie just endorsed him, and Christie was an establishment candidate for him to take the risk, and after all the bad things he said about Trump during the race, to turn around and endorse him. And people are like, oh, I wonder why he did it. We know why he did it. He wants to be his vice president.
Yes.
But that's what I told you. All these guys and why Donald Trump is winning is because all these other Republican politicians, even if they pretend to be tough guys like Chris Christie, are just order takers. They got into the positions they did by pleasing the donors. You know how you please donors? By saying, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Absolutely, sir. So all he did was just bow his head to Trump in this case and go, yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. And then for Trump, after the endorsement, to send him packing like that. Oh, how wonderfully miserable. Let's watch it again.
It's incredible. Incredible.
Oh, that felt good. Schadenfreude. Okay, my two favorite parts. Everything about it is gold, but he almost literally pushes him towards the plane, and he says, "It's over there." Like he knows where the plane is. He's saying, "Hey, it's over there. Go home already." Like you're in my spotlight. Okay, you did your job. You served me well. Pack up, go home. Oh, it's almost as embarrassing as when this happened to Jeff.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.
So that's now two Republicans who've been kicked out the door.
Oh, poor Christie.
No.
Not like I don't actually feel bad for him, but like he just looks like such a clown in that video.
I love it. Now you remember the other embarrassing video about Chris Christie where he was trying to hug Jerry Jones in the middle of a football game and he couldn't even quite get Jerry Jones to hug him back? See, but that's who Chris Christie is. There's a great term for this. They're kick down, kiss up guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and they're the worst people on the planet. People who pick people who are lower than them. So Chris Christie made his reputation in New Jersey by bullying average citizens and by bullying reporters. Hey, shut up! I'm going to tell you what to do. He's yelling at little grandmas on the boardwalk. Mm-hmm. That's how he made his reputation as a tough guy. But when there's someone he actually is above him in the Republican pecking order, like Jerry Jones, give me a hug, Jerry, right? And then with Donald Trump, like, okay, sir, I did a good job, right? Oh yeah, I know, that's about my plane is over there. Okay, right away, right? That's who Chris Christie is. Me.
Oh,
And he said, "Did you see Christie? You got it, okay."
I,
The two things that cross my mind. First, I mentioned this earlier in the meeting. So, Trump is such a general asshole. So whenever he's talking to him, I don't know if the feeling or the sentiment he felt was, say it's your friend that endorsed you, whatever. And this obviously isn't that. But say it's your friend that's endorsed you. He came. I'm running. I'm like, hey, thanks. Hey, man, go home, get some rest. I'm gonna call you whenever I need you. Like, there's a way to do it, and is that his sentiment? He just doesn't know how to say it because he comes off. Only thing he knows how to say is, get over there, go home, it's over there. That's the way he does it. Or is it that he really is like, I really don't respect this guy. Get out of here. Go home.
It is definitely the latter. That is not up for dispute. Okay, like the plane is right behind him. It's not like Chris Christie doesn't know where the plane is. That was the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen. Get in the plane, go home. It's right there. Go home.
oh.
No.
See, it can be intentional.
Go home. Like, there was that extra go, and it's like the go that you give someone when you're really irritated with them and you want to get rid of them as soon as possible. Get in the plane. Go.
JR, normally your monster headphones make you hear better. But in this case, you're giving the dude way too much benefit of the doubt.
I'm just curious. I completely could concede that it could be the second. But also, and if you're Chris Christie, how does that help you? Like, I don't know. There's something that twinges in a. I don't want to be like men versus women, but in a man's soul, somebody tells you, "Hey, get out, hey, over there, plane's there, go home." You stop for a second. Hold on. I'm gonna leave when I want to. Hold on. Let's talk. Even if you really did want to go, you don't go yet.
I know, he's a water boy. You can't understand him, JR, because he's an order taker and he's a water boy. He's there to carry water. That's what his job is. Okay, his job was done. There's the plane. Go home. Okay. All right, let's move forward.
All right. Recently, Donald Trump was on CNN's State of the Union, and he was asked about an endorsement he received from David Duke, who is, of course, a former KKK leader. He was a grand wizard, just a pretty deplorable guy. And the question is whether or not he's ever going to condemn him or at least reject his endorsement. Take a look.
Will you unequivocally condemn David Duke and say that you don't want his vote or that of other white supremacists in this election?
Well, just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know, did he endorse me or what's going on? Because, I know nothing about David Duke. I know nothing about white supremacists. And so you're asking me a question that I'm supposed to be talking about people that I know nothing about.
But I guess the question from the Anti-Defamation League is, even if you don't know about their endorsement, there are these groups and individuals endorsing you. Would you just say unequivocally you condemn them and you don't want their support?
Well, I have to look at the group. I mean, I don't know what group you're talking about. You wouldn't want me to condemn a group that I know nothing about. I have to look. If you would send me a list of the groups, I will do research on them, and certainly I would disavow if I thought there was something wrong. But you may have groups in there that are totally fine, and it would be very unfair. So give me a list of the groups, and I'll let you know.
Okay. I mean, I'm just talking about David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan here, but
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know David Duke. I don't believe I've ever met him. I'm pretty sure I didn't meet him, and I just don't know anything about him.
So that video is so incredible for so many different reasons. But understand that he knows exactly who David Duke is. He's released statements about David Duke in the past. I'll give you examples. Let's go to graphic number 12. In 2000, 16 years ago, Trump called Duke a Klansman when the businessman decided to end his exploration of a run for president. Now, the Reform Party now includes a Klansman, Mr. Duke. This is not company I wish to keep. That's a statement that Donald Trump made back in 2000. You know who David Duke is. You're being asked whether or not you're going to condemn David Duke in this campaign after he's endorsed you. You refuse to answer that question.
Let me paraphrase Marco Rubio here. I want to dispel the notion that Donald Trump doesn't know who David Duke is.
Yeah.
He knows exactly who David Duke is. And I'm sure, of course, he watched my interview with David Duke recently on TYT interviews.
Of course, he's all over that.
Right. And if you watch, if you watch that, and I grant you that it was a very painful interview to watch, right? David Duke will blame anything on the Jews. I mean, let alone his views on blacks and Latinos and how he loves how anti-immigrant Donald Trump is and how he protects the white race and all that stuff. But, I mean, the anti-Semitism out of David Duke, I've literally never heard anyone so anti-Semitic in my life. And we've covered a lot of anti-Semitism on this show, right? So, for him to say he doesn't know who David Duke is, that's preposterous. Why? So why is he saying that? That's the important and interesting part, right? Because he's saying, look, he's thinking in his head, a lot of these racist groups have supported me. Mm-hmm. I'm getting a lot of my support from them. Now, some are easy to dismiss, like the Klan, and he says later that he didn't hear right. Now, he says David Duke 1,000 times. He clearly heard David Duke. There's no question about that. You just saw the video, right? But he's thinking, I don't want to condemn all of them because some of them I might be able to get away with supporting because those are the guys who are actually backing me. Some I could distance myself from and be safe, but I don't want to make that call live on TV.
Look, he wants the support in the primaries, especially in the southern states where people don't necessarily hate David Duke so much. I'm not saying that the majority of people in southern states are in favor of that, but he knows who he's talking to. The vast majority of his base, the Republicans that support him, have been supportive of him from day one when he released that statement about Mexicans being rapists, right? Being criminals. They love it. They love it. Is he going to be willing to lose that vote? Probably not. So that's the reason why I had such a hard time condemning David Duke in that interview.
And I think Mark Cuban described this best, that Donald Trump is just crowd surfing. So he's just giving the audience back what they want to hear because he's a showman, right? Yes. So he's in front of those racist crowds and he just gives it back to them and they go, ah, and they roar in approval and he's like, okay, good, I'm riding it. So he's on live TV riding that crowd every day. And so sometimes he'll like wander into the Klan and be like, wait, am I in the right room? No, I guess not. Okay, right, but barely. And walk out of that room. My question, and this is a hard one, is whether he does that part on purpose or not, right? Because does he know that he's going to get a ton of flack and there's going to be 24-hour of news coverage about how Donald Trump might be with white racists? By the way, if you see how orange he is there, white is apparently the new orange. Okay. And then he walks it back, and then he can say, well, I walked it back, right? Or was he at that moment unsure, wait, I forgot which races I'm supposed to say yes to and which ones I'm supposed to say no to. See, that I'm not positive about.
I feel like he knew what he was doing, and he's gone...
You dispel the notion that he didn't know what he was doing.
That's exactly
he knew exactly what
he was doing. I think that he has gone unchallenged by the media for so long that he didn't expect this. I don't think he expected real journalism to happen, right? And so not only was that interview wonderfully done, what you're about to see was also wonderfully done. He was asked about his support of David Duke supporting him during the Today Show. He was asked why he didn't condemn David Duke. Take a look.
You said 3 times in this interview, I don't know who David Duke is, and you refuse to disavow or distance yourself from him. Now, a lot of people are scratching their heads over that because, number one, you disavowed David Duke 2 days prior. Why are you pretending that you are acting as though you don't know who this person is? Why not disavow David Duke, disavow the KKK? What's going on?
Well, first of all, he talked about David Group and other groups. He talked about other groups.
But you said 3 times, I don't know who David Duke is.
No. Well, I know who he is, but I never met David Duke. So when you talk about it, I never met David Duke.
But in 2000, you refused to run on the Reform Party platform because David Duke was a member of it.
Duke a day before at a major press conference, and I'm saying to myself, how many times do I have to continue to disavow people? And the question was asked about David Duke and various groups, and I don't know who the groups are. I said, would you do me a favor and tell me the groups? He was unable to tell me
that. He says, I'm just talking about David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan here, and you said, honestly, I don't know David Duke.
Okay, so let me tell you, I'm sitting in a house in Florida with a very bad earpiece that they gave me, and you could hardly hear what he was saying, but what I heard was various groups, and I don't mind disavowing anybody, and I disavowed David Duke, and I disavowed him the day before at a major news conference, which is surprising because he was at the major news conference, CNN was at the major news conference, and they heard me very easily disavow David Duke. Now I I go and I sit down again. I have a lousy earpiece that is provided by them. And frankly, he talked about groups. He also talked about groups. And I have no problem with disavowing groups, but I'd at least like to know who they are. It would be very fair to disavow a group, Matt, if the group shouldn't be disavowed. I have to know who the groups are. But I disavowed David Duke. Now, if you look on Facebook, right after that, I also disavowed David Duke. When we looked at it and looked at the question, I disavowed David Duke. So I disavowed David Duke all weekend long on Facebook, on Twitter, and obviously it's never enough.
So it was a setup. CNN gave him a bad earpiece. They asked him something that they already knew, and it was a setup. That's all it was. The media, which has a great record of challenging him and going after him, set him up to make it seem like he's supportive of a KKK member.
Yeah. He clearly heard David Duke because he repeated it about 7 times in the Jake Tapper interview. Credit to Jake Tapper. Very good interview there. One of the few guys in mainstream media who ask smart questions or follow-up questions. And I'm not an enormous fan of the disavowal game. You got to disavow this guy, you got to disavow that. But some guys are layups.
Yeah.
It's not hard to disavow the Klan or David Duke. But if you're running in a Republican race built on racism, that's why you might get confused from time to time and be like, wait, was I supposed to disavow the Klan? I kind of forget, right? But this was so bad, even Joe Scarborough came out this morning and said this is disqualifying.
Wow.
Yes.
That's actually shocking.
And that's one of his best pals in the media.
Yeah.
So the fact that Trump either couldn't figure out that the Klan was a bridge too far is disastrous, or if it doesn't hurt him at all and he wins, the fact that the Klan is not a bridge too far is disastrous for the Republican Party.
Yes, it is. It does not speak highly of the Republican Party, to say the least.
Yep.
All right, let's take our final break of the hour. When we come back, we'll tell you the fate of Melissa Harris Perry on MSNBC. We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're going to help us run the country.
Like this.
It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
We had a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us. Whoa! Democracy!
United!
We are!
We are!
Too strong! There's thousands of volunteers. You need to be among them.
With Wolfpack, the mission is so clear.
Money is killing our democracy. 96% of Americans want it. When you get the power back, oh, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Let's go get them, man. Up and at them. Knock, knock. We're coming for them! Wolf-pack.com. All right, back on the Young Turks. Don't forget, guys. I know I keep emphasizing it, but it really needs to be emphasized. Tomorrow is a huge, huge day. Super Tuesday. In fact, it's a super day. 11 states are voting, and we keep talking about the Democratic side because it's so important. If Bernie Sanders loses Massachusetts, he's probably done. If he wins Massachusetts, Colorado, and Minnesota, he's probably the favorite. So it doesn't get any bigger than that. There's also the Republican side, and there's also a possibility that Donald Trump sweeps all 11 states.
Kasich thinks that he will, which was an interesting statement to release when you still haven't suspended your campaign.
I know. And so Ted Cruz is likely to win Texas. That's his home state. Rubio, if he doesn't win any states, which is very likely, what's going on here? So it is going to be a hell of a race. Starting right here at 6 p.m. Eastern, okay? We'll be covering it. We got polls closing at all different times. We'll have all the information for you. TYTnetwork.com/live. Don't miss a minute of it. We also have a GOP debate on Thursday, but one thing at a time. We'll cover that as well. So, surprisingly, a lot of people agreed with JR on Donald Trump, or at least a couple of tweeters. Rob and then Brad Steinman wrote in, JR, I agree with you. There's a chance that Christie needed to leave in a hurry, and Trump was just saying go. You guys are wonderfully, I don't want to say naive, but you guys have good, open, kind hearts.
Yeah.
Now, it's a nice interpretation. That's not what happened. You're entirely wrong, but I love you anyway. Denny McCool writes in, have joined the TYT Army and proud of it. Thank you. So TYTnetwork.com/join to become a member. Today we have a post game because there's no debate or election.
I can't wait. I have so many things to talk about during the post game.
Oh, me too.
You do?
Yeah, I have at least one thing that I promised them earlier. That remember the accident I got in?
Oh, that's right. That's gonna be a good story.
Right, and my rage against the insurance machine. Okay, so that's in members get the post games. Okay, and then Yeshua Espila writes in, why does Donald Trump have trouble remembering things? Didn't he recently tell us his doctor said he was in perfect health? Okay, that's a good point.
Is he having a hard time hearing things too?
Yeah, good question. All right, forward.
All right. MSNBC has decided to part ways with host Melissa Harris Perry after weeks of some tension. Now, the tension all began when there was apparently some miscommunication when it came to the way election coverage was going to be done on the network, and also a lot of disagreement as to what she could and could not cover on her show. Now, before we get into the details of all that, I just want to note that it seems like there are some things happening behind the scenes that we're unaware of. However, 2 days after an email that Melissa Harris Perry sent out became public, where she said she felt worthless to NBC News executives, and after 2 weeks of her show being preempted so that the network could cover other news, an MSNBC spokesman on Sunday confirmed that the network and Miss Harris Perry were parting ways. Okay. So she did tweet about it. She said, inviting diverse new voices to the table was a privilege, grateful for years of support and criticism. She had been on MSNBC with her show since 2012. Okay. So it all kind of started when they wanted to do election coverage. They want to dedicate the entire year to election coverage, which you will see on most cable outlets. And apparently, in one case, she was in Des Moines covering what was happening in Iowa with the primaries, and Ari Melber was hosting her show. And she was angry because she felt as though she was a host on her own show.
A guest on her own show.
A guest on her own show. Look, and to be honest with you, during election season, that kind of stuff happens all the time. So Super Tuesday is going to happen tomorrow. We're not having a second hour, right? And so, yeah, that kind of sucks, but you understand that you got to kind of roll with the punches during an election season. There was another situation, though, where Melissa Harris Perry wanted to cover Beyonce's Super Bowl performance of the song Formation. And MSNBC decided, no, stick to election coverage, that's what we're focusing on. Well, she didn't listen, and she continued to do that video or that story on Beyonce. As she was doing it, they started showing footage of election stuff, right? The candidates.
Right, in the corner of the screen.
Right.
So they're obviously super annoyed at her for not doing the election stuff. So now this goes to a fundamental misunderstanding that Melissa Harris Perry had about MSNBC, and others have. Don't worry, I'm here to correct that. But before we do that, I do want to read you one of her quotes that was very, I'm sure the people at MSNBC found it inflammatory, right? But in the email that she sent, that was not supposed to be public, that got leaked, and that started to unravel this whole situation. She said, "I will not be used as a tool for their purposes. I am not a token mammy or little brown bobblehead. I'm not owned by Lack, who is now with NBC News and kind of driving the show here, Griffin, who's the president of MSNBC, or MSNBC. I love our show, and I want it back." So, there's a lot more drama back and forth, but let me explain here what happened. So, the Beyonce incident goes to the misunderstanding of how there is a self-selection process on television, on mainstream and establishment media, and how a lot of the hosts are not aware of it. So that's why I keep telling you, like, if you told Anderson Cooper, you told any of these guys, hey, you know that you're being used as a tool, he would be outraged. No way! But what they don't understand is that you got selected because you follow orders. If you don't follow orders, this is what happens. It's happened over and over again, and they never believe it until it happens to them. Right? So, like, MSNBC is actually the king of it. Back in a different administration of MSNBC, when they had different management, they did it to Phil Donahue, Ashley Banfield, and Jesse Ventura. Right as we were going up to the Iraq War, those three did not agree. They were removed from the air, right? In this era of MSNBC management under Phil Griffin, it happened to, me, okay, Martin Bashir, Ed Schultz. People forget it happened to Dylan Radigan, too. And Dylan's a super nice guy, so I don't know how he would frame it. He's probably more cautious about it. But Dylan Radigan was raging against the machine, right? He spoke out against the establishment all the time, and all of a sudden, MSNBC decided, well, maybe not, right? What a wonderful coincidence for the 800th time in a row. And then Joy Reid moved it out of her time slot. Now Melissa Harris Perry. These are not all coincidences. You see, if you don't follow the rules, and they give you a sign, it's never as clear as the one I got. Mine was super clear. They just sat me down and said, look, we're part of the establishment. You got to act like it. Washington's not happy with your tone. Now they know better. They give you dog whistles. For Melissa Harris Perry, they said, you really should cover the election. Now, her editorial judgment was correct. That Beyonce story was huge.
Yes.
We know we covered it. We got millions of views. It wasn't just a matter of it being an important story, which it was. Because pop culture influences so many things, and she challenged power, Beyonce did with that move. But it was also the right move in terms of ratings. She was right, they were wrong. But that's not the point. The point is, you bow your head, and if you don't bow your head, you're gone. You're gone. And not only does that mean you're off the air, thank God, for their purposes, but it also sends a message to everyone else. When management tells you to do something, you do it, okay? And you don't worry about your editorial decisions. You thought it was your show? It's not your show.
Yeah, so I want to add on to that, because I think that there's not only a misunderstanding by people who end up hosting these shows on cable news outlets, I think there's a misunderstanding by people who watch these outlets, right? They look at these hosts and they think, well, some of them might be actual journalists. Some of them might have gone, to school and gotten an education in journalism, might have been out on the field doing real reporting. But there are some who haven't even delved into journalism whatsoever. They're actors and actresses, right? But at the same time, even if you are a hardcore journalist and you get this coveted role as a host on a cable news outlet, you don't get to make editorial decisions that matter, right? You are a puppet. And that's the thing that doesn't appeal to people like me, right? And so at some point in your journalistic career, should you choose to be one, you have to choose between money, where you are a puppet, right? You get to make millions of dollars, but you don't get to make decisions that matter. Or you get to work for digital or new media, where it might not be as profitable, but at least you get to cover the stories that matter, right? And you don't have to worry about someone breathing down your neck telling you, no, you can't cover that. You only get to do election coverage.
So there is a certain naivete. Yes, some degree in the audience, as you point out, but also among the people who work there.
Yeah.
Again, I know I've been there, right? And everybody who's still in the building will furiously deny, no, what are you talking about? I can do anything I want. No, you can do any story you like, as long as they don't object. Now, if they object, then you're going to have issues, right? And so, right now, for all the people who've left the building or been escorted out of the building, they finally get it. Oh, I see. So in Melissa Harris Perry's case, she's very smart. She's a professor at the university. There's a ton I agree with her on. There's also some substantial disagreements we have, right? And now let's notice that while MSNBC had a pro-Obama period, in fact, that's one of the reasons they asked me to leave, because I kept attacking Obama, it kept attacking the Democratic Party from the left, right? We weren't going to have that. Instead, they brought in Al Sharpton, who promised on the air to CBS 60 Minutes that he will never attack President Obama. In the Obama era of MSNBC, Al Sharpton promoted, Melissa Harris Perry promoted. Your show is useful, so we would like to have you here. Now they're in a new era, which is, no, we're not liberals anymore. We're not pro-Obama anymore. We're back to the establishment. Joe Scarborough is back to being king. By the way, they were always pro-establishment, not just because of the speech I got, but because Joe Scarborough was never in danger. Everyone was always in, hey, maybe this, maybe that, you can go too far left. But even on MSNBC, you couldn't go too far right? Yep. Joe Scarborough was always there, but now he's even greatly empowered. And he's clearly the new boss there. He's like, yes, the establishment is back. And it doesn't mean right-wing. It's just that the establishment is right-wing. It is conservative. It does want to protect the establishment. So, now, finally, will this new approach work? Good luck with that. Hear me now, quote me later, write it down in stone. This will be a ratings disaster. It will be a debacle of epic proportions. Could they have a slight bump up during the election season when everybody's having a big bump up during the election season? Sure. Well, on any given night, can they do well if they're covering a debate or a town hall, which are handed to them? These giant media gifts handed to them, right? Yes, sure. Could some of their shows do okay in the meanwhile? Sure. But in the long run, and certainly after the elections, that collapse will be enormous, it'll be imminent, and it'll be unrecoverable. What they've done here is ended MSNBC. And I don't mean as a liberal network, that's now patently obvious. In their actual DNA, they were never liberals. They had a nice little run with some progressive shows, which they misunderstood to be pro-Obama shows. That's what they wanted. We've got a lot of contracts in front of the government. We've got a lot of mergers we want in front of the government. Be pro-government. Obama happens to be the government, then we're going to be pro-Obama, right? We're now done with that era. Now we're back to being right-wing and establishment. But it's not just because they're done as that progressive or even pro-Obama network. They're done as a network. You are not going to beat Fox News by being Fox News Light. You're not going to beat CNN, which is beating itself anyway, by being CNN Light. Being CNN Light is a miserable path to take if you're trying to get ratings.
Yeah.
Their ratings after the election will be so terrible that they will consider closing down the network and eventually will.
Yeah.
They have killed MSNBC as a network. It is done. It's just a matter of time. They're just running out the clock from here on out.
I don't know what to add to that.
Okay, all right.
Devastating. Should we continue?
Let's do one more story.
I really want to do the newspaper story.
Sure.
Cool? Okay,
yeah.
Let's do it.
So, guys, we're going to the endorsement that Marco Rubio got.
Yes. All right. The Richmond Times-Dispatch has decided to endorse Marco Rubio. And the reason why this is making news is because this particular publication usually holds off on endorsing anyone until about October, meaning after the primaries. Now, why have they decided to do this? Well, they feel that it is almost like their civic duty to promote Marco Rubio over Trump. After considerable reflection, we have decided that standing on the sidelines as Virginians go to the polls Tuesday would be a dereliction of our duty. It is the flaws of two men seeking the Republican nomination that pushed us into abandoning our usual practice of making a presidential endorsement in the waning weeks of October. Okay, so the reason why I love this story and the reason why I want to talk about it is because of how much they think this matters, right? Like, no one cares, okay? You're too late. Trump has a massive lead in Virginia. It's over. It's over, okay? Your endorsement of Marco Rubio wouldn't really mean much prior to Trump beating everyone in the primaries, right? But right now, at this point, it means even less. And it's incredible to me because the appeal of Donald Trump is that he's an anti-establishment candidate. He's a terrible person. He's a good candidate because his messaging is very successful and he goes against the machine, right? Using establishment strategies to support establishment candidates is not going to do you any justice when you're trying to beat Donald Trump.
Yeah. So, first of all, you might be wondering, I hear all the time the media is liberal, but yet all these papers, they keep endorsing, not all, but a lot of them endorse Republican candidates. So here it's not that they're endorsing within a primary. Richmond Times-Dispatch in the last two elections supported John McCain over Barack Obama and Mitt Romney over Barack Obama. Okay, you have Republican and conservative you have to be to support Mitt Romney over Barack Obama. And so, and the reason they do that is because they're owned by very rich people. When the editorial goes out and who to endorse, they ask the owner, right? And the owner who would like lower taxes and deregulation and all that stuff, all of a sudden that's a liberal. Okay. Now, in this case, yes, there's an establishment within this newspaper, right? Owner plus producer, editors, yada yada, who are sitting around swirling their cognac in their, desks that smell of rich mahogany. Okay. So I do declare because we have a bit of a problem with Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. I give him credit for also including Ted Cruz in that camp. But Anna's right. Who are you? And these guys are from 40 years ago, and all politics is local. It's what the Richmond Times-Dispatch says. It's going to matter a lot. Yeah, maybe in 1765, dude. Nobody reads the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Nobody.
I think it's the self-importance that made me laugh at this story because they came out and they're like, "Do you guys understand what we're doing is a big deal? Like we usually wait until October, but we're actually going to tell you what we think now." How many millennials are sitting there reading the Richmond Times-Dispatch editorial board and thinking to themselves, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, yeah."
Oh, they made a good point. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Thank you. The other day, I had to explain to my kids what a newspaper was because they've never seen one.
Amazing.
Okay, so now look, I don't want anybody to mistake what we're saying here. I love news gatherers on the ground, Associated Press, Reuters, AFP, McClatchy newspapers. There's some wonderful organizations that are doing great work, right? We need those guys. They're essential not just to media, but to democracy, okay? But the self-importance of these newspapers, as evidenced by this and so many of their other actions, is laughable, right? Your time has passed, and you're still pretending to be king.
Yeah.
And so if you told, for example, the Richmond Times-Dispatch, well, the Young Turks have done this, right? If we did endorsements or anything, they'd be like, an online organization, have they? Swirl the cognac.
I do declare.
I do declare. It's not nearly as important as the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Well, ironically, you've been dispatched and you don't even know it. Okay. All right. I know what they're thinking.
Give me a break.
Sorry, can't do it. Can't give you that break. And I know what you're thinking is we have to go to break.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.
When we come back, second hour, man, the Oscars were super liberal last night. And also, ironically, super black. Did they go too far? Can you go too far in being black? We'll discuss when we come back. Welcome to your Friday postgame. Except it's currently midday on Thursday.
Are you going to fire me?
Sometimes I'm being a dick. Back in 2005, we almost went under, but members rescued us.
Once their only method of success is going the athletic route, it tends to be the more preferred way to treat your body.
Nothing good in the world is ever happening. Strong arm that all they want to do is fight. It's totally bullshit.
Don't do drugs and don't shoot people.
TYT is all in a good mood today. I know I'm a weirdo if I read books, but fuck people. I have a stack of cables here. Believe it or not, this is how Jack used to be when he did the radio show. Wait till you see these huge things.
I'm going to go with your tricep. Size, very impressive. The quads.
That's for the members. That's for the post games together. We're too strong.
movie or the greatest movie ever made in the history of cinema?
I love this movie.
Oh, that was great. Oh, damn.
I was just totally dazzled in every way.
What the hell was that? It was insane. Cut. Shut up, movie.
It just fails on like every single level.
Michael Bay.
It is so rapid fire.
Terrifying. Garbage. Nuts. That was just ridiculous.
Was it written by ABBA?
He's pulling strings like Yo-Yo Ma.
Get paid for the whole scene?
Yeah. A couple tweets for you guys. Tara Lay Griffin says, I know that rage. I'll definitely be watching today's postgame to hear Jenks rage against the insurance machine. Hashtag can't go unchained. Yeah, so somebody hit me, and it looks like I'll have to pay. And I know, it's...
I can't wait to hear this story.
Alright, okay. And he hit me from behind.
How does it ever
When do I not pay? Okay, so
That's amazing.
all the members get the post game. TYTnetwork.com/join. Member shout outs here for today are member number 1173, John Alenza, and member number 1174, Michael O'Malley. That's a wonderfully Irish name. Okay, Murray writes in, I fully admitted I was fooled by MSNBC until TYT opened my eyes. Feel so dumb for being fooled for so long. Well, Murray, I mean, look, it's funny, but that's almost too unkind to them because Keith Olbermann, a guy I've got enormous personal problems with, okay, was an actual progressive. He wasn't faking it. He wasn't kidding, and he did a great show, right? Rachel did a great show. In a lot of ways, she still does a great, great show, right? They're not faking it. They're not trying to trick you. Management has a different agenda. And that's why I've never been mad at Phil Griffin. I've said this 100 times, although no one believes me. So he runs MSNBC. Dude, he's a corporate, I don't want to say robot. I mean, he's a CEO, right? That's his job is to take orders from the parent company. MSNBC is a subsidiary. That's what he does.
Yeah.
Listen, there's no point in getting mad at Phil Griffin, right? So just understand the different dynamics at play. And then No More Donations writes, if any MSNBC host had backbone, they'd report on problematic Comcast merger, but crickets. That's way too much to ask for. Honestly, I don't know that I could have done that if I stayed at MSNBC. One of the reasons I didn't stay, right? Because that is so important to the parent company. They're paying you a lot of money. I mean, I made really good money there.
Yeah.
They're making phenomenal money. The hosts that are there now,
yeah.
Okay, and if the guy paying you, like Chris Matthews, I understand, makes $5 million a year. By the way, that's the other guy who was never in danger. Okay.
Sorry, I had to get that out.
And so, isn't it interesting that Scarborough is theoretically on the right, Matthews is theoretically on the left, but neither one of them are ever in danger because they're not on the right and left. They're in the establishment. Matthews just comes at it from like, yay, Democratic Party, but the establishment of the Democratic Party. Scarborough comes at it from the establishment of the Republican Party.
Do you know what Scarborough makes?
I don't, but it's a lot.
Yeah, I bet it's more than Chris Matthews.
Well, that part's unclear. There's a lot of drama there. I love that. Despite all that I've told you about the internal workings of MSNBC from time, I tell you things that are relevant. I know a lot of other stuff that is not relevant. It's just, gossip, yada, yada. Okay.
I mean, we can talk about that off the record.
Okay. Well, I've never talked about it. There's no need to talk about it. Anyway, so a guy, Chris Matthews would never be inclined to talk about the Comcast merger anyway, and if he did, he'd probably love it. And that's his nature. That's why they like him so much. But here's what Chris Matthews ain't going to do. Endanger a $5 million a year contract on a matter of principle to disagree with your bosses. Right? That's not who he is. That's why he'll be there forever. Okay. Keeping it real. All right. Now let's move forward.
All right. During the Oscars this past weekend, there were a number of speeches that brought up the issue of diversity and racism within Hollywood. Now, it's unsurprising, especially when you consider the fact that Oscars So White was a hashtag that was trending weeks prior to the Oscars actually taking place. And that's because not very many, or actually no, black actors were nominated for any of these awards. So there was a lot of anger as a result of that. Now, Chris Rock decided to do the exact opposite of what Will Smith or Jada Pinkett Smith decided to do. He hosted the Oscars. He did not boycott it, and he gave his reasons for why he did it. Now, he used his platform as a way of raising awareness about racism within Hollywood, and of course, that led to a lot of mixed reactions. Now, let me tell you exactly what he said during his 10-minute monologue. He says, I counted at least 15 black people in that montage, said Rock after he took the stage following an opening montage of films from 2015. He went on to call the Oscars the White People's Choice Awards. In addressing the Oscars So White controversy, Rock said he decided not to boycott the ceremony, saying he thought about it real hard, but the last thing I need is to lose another job to Kevin Hart. Jada boycotting the Oscars is like me boycotting Rihanna's panties. I wasn't invited. There's more, but let's stop there.
So that's a really funny line. But the monologue was already so awkward, and I don't mean awkward in any slight to Chris Rock. It's just he was hitting everybody. Mm-hmm. He was hitting white folks, he was hitting black folks. He was hitting everybody. That by the time he got to Rihanna's panties, everyone was like, oh. and he actually, I think he stumbled a little bit on that line, which made it even more awkward. You're like, wait, why are we inside Rihanna's panties? Like, how did we get here?
I thought that line thankfully led to a little comedic relief because
it's actually a really funny line.
It was a super funny line. But what I did notice is throughout the award ceremony, he seemed to be playing both sides a little bit. Like, don't get me wrong, I give him a tremendous amount of credit for being the host of the Oscars and straight up calling Hollywood racist. But at the same time, there were moments where I was like, it seems like he's playing both sides because he doesn't want to bite the hand that feeds, which, by the way, who wouldn't want to bite the hand that feeds in cases like this?
Well, no, but to be fair to Chris Rock, maybe that was his intention, to make fun of everybody.
Maybe. Okay, so let me give you more of his monologue, and you can decide for yourself. Graphic number 7A. We had real things to protest in the 50s and 60s. We were too busy being raped and lynched to care who won Best Cinematographer. When your grandmother is swinging from a tree, it's hard to care about the best documentary foreign short.
See, that right there, that really crystallizes exactly what Chris Rock did last night. Because the juxtaposition is humorous, but it's hard to laugh because you just mentioned rapes and lynchings.
Right.
And your grandmother swinging from a tree. But sometimes it's the job of the comedian to make you uncomfortable. So what he did there was powerful. In the guise of a joke, he reminded people, like, black folks have gone through some stuff in this country. Like, you want to close your eyes to it, it makes you uncomfortable. Too bad, I got an audience here, and I'm going to take advantage of it to remind you. Now, on the other hand, that's also partly a dig at the African Americans protesting the Oscars.
Yes, which
right?
is why I brought up the point about him kind of playing both sides. Like, don't get me wrong, what he did was good, and overall, I'm behind him, right? But, yeah, it is a dig at people who are protesting the lack of recognition that black actors and actresses get, and I don't think that that's necessary.
Mm-hmm. No, look, I'm not going to nitpick his editorial decisions there.
Yeah.
Because I might agree with some of it, I might not agree with some of it, but at least he had balls.
Yeah.
He went in both directions, and he went pretty hard in both directions. And when you talk lynchings, I'm no longer in a mood to laugh, right? So it kind of, for me, the comedic element, the minute he said that, went out of the room, right? Mm-hmm. But then I was listening, man. Oh boy, he had our attention. And so he chose kind of a bold path. In some ways, I don't know if I'm giving him too much credit here, but it reminded me of the Stephen Colbert, White House Correspondents' Dinner speech where he just went right after the establishment. Mm-hmm. And everybody in the room hated it.
I do remember that.
It was so funny, even though the room was so tense, right? And more than being funny, it was courageous.
Yeah, so he touched on other things as well. I want to get to in just a second, but here's a little more of his monologue. He says this year the in memoriam package is just going to be black people who were shot by cops on their way to the movies. That's also a strong statement, obviously. And he says, you're damn right Hollywood is racist. Hollywood is sorority racist. We like you, Rhonda, but you're not a Kappa. We want opportunity.
Okay, so let me explain. That's my favorite line, right? So I like that he reminded people of black people getting shot, going to the movies, and going everywhere else. Again, there's people at home. I think I got the sense, and I could be wrong, that even well-intentioned white people were thinking, I got it, enough. But I'm glad he pressed that button, okay? Because that's what starts conversations like this one, where we all learn a little bit more. But the sorority line is great. It's like, they're not racist like the Klan. He explained, they're not outward racist, but they're racist as in, this is the one we want in our sorority, and this is the one we don't. And if you're on that side, sad day for you. He's like, look, all we're looking for is an opportunity.
Yeah.
So that was really, to me, poignant.
Yeah, there's a way, I think his successful way of pointing out how racism has kind of transformed throughout the decades, right? It's not as overt as it used to be. It's not as violent in some cases as it used to be. But it hides in the way we do certain things. And I like that he pointed that out.
But either way, you're still not in the club, right? So, JR, I knew you wanted to get it.
I didn't watch, so I mean, take that for what it was. Not because I was boycotting, because I never watched the Oscars.
But you started your boycott of the Oscars many years ago.
Yeah, because I've tried watching it multiple times. So Oscar party, and then I end up being like Anna at a Super Bowl party. I'm like, what the fuck am I still here for? But I hear you, but sometimes it goes outside of what the normal thought process is. We don't like that CNN just tries to play it down and go, well, some say the Cowboys won, like the same analogy used, and some say the Redskins won. But, you decide. Take a stance, dude. And yeah, it was brave, but you hit everyone. It's like those people on Twitter. They go, I'm trying to use social justice warriors. Which one is it? There's racism, or there's exclusionary tactics, there's biases, but then at the same time, you guys stop complaining. Now, maybe this is a more heightened example, but Rosa Parks, yeah, you should be able to sit where you want on the bus, but at least they let you ride. That kind of seemed to be the tone from what I'm hearing again. I didn't see the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, which way is it going to be?
So your statements are both fair and unfair. It's fair. Then he brought out Stacey Dash, who's a conservative douchebag, and it's like they could have done that for just comedic purposes, and then kind of poking fun at her without her even recognizing. She didn't even say a word, right? It was super awkward again because nobody knows who Stacey Dash is unless you're knee deep in politics like us, and we're like, oh, what's she doing on there, right? Yeah. But afterwards, he took a picture with her, and he seemed very cordial with her, like, hey, this is part of what's going on. On the other hand, look, I think he's well within his rights to do the joke that he did on Will Smith, where it's like, okay, Will, you didn't get a nomination this year, okay, but you did get $20 million for Wild Wild West.
I know, look, I get that.
That's a fair joke, man.
But to say, like, well, you're a highly profitable actor, and as a result, you're not allowed to make any statements about, the lack of recognition of the black community within the Oscars, I think that's a ridiculous statement to make. Like, okay, so he's rich, he's made money in Hollywood. That doesn't mean that he doesn't notice certain ills within, Hollywood and how he should point it out.
I'm so torn on this because, on the one hand, if I was Will Smith, I wouldn't have protested this year because he was in a movie, he could have gotten a nomination this year and he didn't. So that seems like more like sour grapes. I would have been more likely to protest if I wasn't in a movie this year. You see what I'm saying? If I wasn't up for one of the awards, because then it seems like, well, why didn't you give it to me? I'm black. You should have given it to me. That doesn't feel good, right? On the other hand, okay, now I'm being Chris Rock. On the other hand, okay, so a lot of folks said, hey, this isn't right. And you know what happened? The Oscars responded by making the Oscars the most black Oscars I have ever seen, okay? It was one black presenter after another. It was more jokes about, this Oscar's so white. They would not stop for like the first hour and a half. It's like, Oscars are white and it's wrong. Okay, Kevin Hart came out. Everybody came out and said it. So, hey, look, they did what sometimes Republicans do. Mm-hmm. Like, they complain so much that they get people to react and go, okay, right? So here, people said, hey, you know what, this ain't right. Until they got the Oscars to go, okay. We'll make every other presenter black. We'll keep making fun of ourselves. Well, in a sense, mission accomplished. Everybody is talking about it, and everybody is aware of the issue.
So you'd hope the next step would be, what are you going to do now? Sometimes you feel like you're being placated. So this goes into the argument that a lot of Republicans say the Democrats just use black people. So we want to make sure it doesn't go to that. We go, okay, black folks, you're right. We'll make fun of ourselves for several hours tonight, and then next year we'll fuck you over again. So as long as something changes. So it's easy to say all these idiots, we're just going to tell them that, yeah, sure, yeah, we're wrong, yeah, you're right, and then move right along and continue to do the same thing. So we have such a short attention span now. You just hope that this continues, or at least the pressure continues that actual change can happen. We're already upset when politicians, say they're going to do something and then never do it, and then just talk about it. So hopefully it doesn't just get talked about.
Yeah, last thing on this is that other than the stapler being near JR's head, what is that? That's a new graphic. Can you show you? Does that look like a stapler?
Yeah, it does look like a stapler.
Okay. Anyway, last thing on this is that, look, for people who don't get it, look, there's a lot of African Americans in the movies. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what they want, right? It's the mindset, right? So there's African American roles. There's Latino roles, right? There's roles for other groups of people, right? But ironically, other than Will Smith, you hardly ever get a leading man who's black who isn't there to be black, but just to be a person.
Yes.
Right?
That's a good point.
And so I think that's the real underlying problem.
Yeah, I think that Chris Rock also made a really good point about how certain categories are segregated based on gender. So best leading actor, best leading actress, and he's like, why can't we just include them all in one group, right? Like, why? How weird would it be if you had best supporting black actor, right? It would be absurd. So it's interesting that we have that kind of segregation when it comes to male and female actors, like as if we're like they're built so differently when it comes to acting that they need their own categories. I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
Oh yeah, and to be fair, also Denzel Washington. Denzel and Will Smith are allowed to be just people. Everybody else has to fill a role.
Yeah. All right, moving on. The most awkward moment of the Oscars was definitely when Stacey Dash was called up on stage to make a very brief comment about Black History Month. Now, the reason why this is relevant is because Stacey Dash is one of the only Black conservatives who has come out, spoken to Fox News, and let them know that she thinks Black History Month is a bunch of bull. If you don't believe me, take a look at this video.
We have to make up our minds. Either we want to have segregation or integration. And if we don't want segregation, then we need to get rid of channels like BET and the BET Awards and the Image Awards, where you're only awarded if you're black. If it were the other way around, we would be up in arms. It's a double standard.
So you say there shouldn't a BET channel?
No, I don't think so. No. Just like there shouldn't be a Black History Month. You know, we're Americans, period. That's it.
Are you saying there shouldn't be a Black History Month because there isn't a White History Month?
Exactly.
Such an incredible video.
It's so wonderfully appropriate that she starred in a movie called Clueless. Now, every once in a while, she's described as a clueless star. I'm like, yeah, bingo, that's it. So, Stacey, here's what you apparently can't understand, is that there is a power dynamic at play, right? So, white people have been in charge in this country for a long time. So when they talk about white power, well, that has a history, and it's not a good history, right? When you talk about black power, that is the little guy trying to stand up for justice and for equal rights. It doesn't mean, black power doesn't mean, well, now blacks will get to dominate whites. It means, no, like hey, can you stop shooting us? Back in the day, it meant, can you stop lynching us, right? These are fair requests. So, Black History Month exists because blacks are a minority in this country. If they held power and they did Black History Month, that would be deeply problematic. But see, that takes a tiny bit of sophistication to understand that, which Stacey Dash is obviously incapable.
Yeah, look, if both races were on an equal playing field right now and they had complete equality, right, and we have a long way to go when it comes to that, well, then maybe her statement about, having awards that are segregated based on race doesn't make sense, right? But we're not there. We're not even close to that. So she makes those statements on cable television. Of course, she got a lot of backlash for it. So it was really weird when Chris Rock all of a sudden announces that Stacey Dash is going to come out and make a statement. So we can't show you the video, but I'll tell you exactly what she says. She comes out, and this is all she says, awkwardly. I cannot wait to help my people out. Happy Black History Month. And then she giggles and leaves. And it sounds sarcastic and weird, and you don't know what the intentions are. And then later on, Chris Rock refers to her as the director of the Minority Outreach Program. Is that sarcasm? What was the point of that? Was it just to, rile people up, get people talking about the Oscars? I have no idea, but it was strange.
That's a joke that's the old words of Herman Cain, which I guess is appropriate here. 2 layers deep.
I guess so.
And it gets lost. An old friend, Ben Mankiewicz, once taught me, keep your jokes 1 layer deep. Okay. So in this, that's when I used to write for Ben back in the day in Miami. In this case, I think that they're being sarcastic and saying, hey, we're doing minority outreach, not to blacks, but to conservatives, by bringing Stacey Dash out. Because Stacey Dash is a black person who is against Black History Month. So she comes out and makes that small little statement, leaves, and that's their minority outreach to conservatives, right? But that is way too deep, right? That takes several different hoops you got to jump through. And on top of that, the most important part is you got to know who the hell Stacey Dash is, where you just lost 99% of Americans.
Yeah.
They don't know who she is. They don't know what she represents. And look, there's a lot of folks who have different opinions. We've got a country of 300 million people, right? She keeps appearing on Fox News because Fox News likes her thing, right? she's a convenient tool for them. So this is the part of the Oscars I did not enjoy, not only because it wasn't remotely funny, not just because it went over the head of everybody.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the funny thing is, the ironic exception is me. I understood what they were going for because I am deeply engaged in politics, and I'm one of the few people who know Stacey Dash because we were forced to watch Fox News, to cover the news.
Strange.
Right? But on top of that, see, that's a dig too far. A lot of moments in Chris Rock stand-up where he went after black people who were criticizing the Oscars. He did a lot of moments where he went after white people. I support him on all of them, right? But there's no need to bring Stacey Dash in here and say like, ha, there shouldn't be Black History Month, but we're kind of kidding because she's a conservative. Yeah, don't empower this tool.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because she felt like she was being empowered, right? It doesn't seem like she realized that the joke was on her, right? Like, she came out, and you should have heard the audience, okay? There were, like, a few people, like, slowly clapping. They're like, what, is she here? It sounded like there might have even been a few boos. Like, it was a very, very weird audience reaction, but I totally understand why they'd have that reaction. And then after she made their statement, people were, like, quiet for at least a second, and then they're like,
yeah, they didn't.
That was it. Like, they had no idea.
The only people who got it were the ones who were outraged.
That's exactly right. Now, afterwards, she tweeted about this, and she said, we need to stop complaining about white people oppressing us. We shouldn't boycott the Oscars, and we need to support Chris Rock, the host. Chris Rock also defended his decision to feature Stacey Dash in that situation, and he tweeted a picture of the two of them together. We have that, graphic number 18. Weird. New Academy Director of Diversity Outreach, #Oscars.
Yeah, I didn't like any part of this. So, sad day. And I'll do one last dig here at conservatives. So they'll be mad. Oh yeah, liberals are, and they even know liberals kept saying things throughout the event, climate change and race and
they all talk
stuff,
like
right?
that. Come on.
And they call conservatives a minority, and they're the minority, aren't we? Right. Well, then why don't you go be entertaining and make it to the Oscars? Right? They love to cry about how, Hollywood is liberal. All right, well, if you were smarter, more interesting, more creative, more successful, maybe you could be at the Oscars. But I guess you're not. That's why your top celebrities are people like Ted Nugent, who's mainly famous for crapping himself.
Oh, disaster.
Okay.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, more stuff, including Leonardo DiCaprio's speech on climate change.
Yeah, that was great.
Borrowed money from the Chinese and they give it to us because they're nice people. We're a bunch of capitalists borrowing money from a bunch of communists so we can bring democracy to a bunch of Muslims who don't even fucking want it. I saw a comedian on the TV, he said, if you're 30, 35, 40 and you still work at a fast food restaurant, you're a loser. I was like, oh, thank God. Somebody finally stood up to the minimum wage worker and took them down a few pegs. That's the beauty of Facebook, right? You find out that you really don't like your friends. Because I think a lot of the gay guys themselves voted against gay marriage. I'd love to marry you. I can't wait. Let me go vote. No. And then afterwards, you act upset about it. Oh, I wanted to marry you, but they made it illegal.
Mayweather will knock out Pacquiao. Floyd beats his wife.
Este nene ote caramba. Este nene ote.
Hi, back on the Young Turks. A couple of tweets for you guys. Reefer Madness says Chris Rock put it in historical context. He didn't say stop fighting. He simply wanted people to recognize that change can happen. I think that's a fair interpretation, and there are definitely many legitimate interpretations of what happened last night. Michael Cleves writes in, the Oscars are just lost on me, like the Grammys, as a bunch of rich people giving other rich white people trophies. Shrug.
That's actually a really good way of putting it. I also don't watch the Oscars. Because I just don't find it that interesting. I don't know. I've never really found it that interesting.
I haven't watched Oscars in years. I watched it this year. No, not because of the controversy. Honestly, because my mom was over and she really wanted to watch. For some reason, my wife really wanted to watch this year. And so I'm like, okay, it's a family thing. And then I was like, whoa, I got lucky.
Yeah.
This was a rare, super interesting year where a lot of interesting political stuff went down in this Oscar.
Right.
And then Connor said, no, Brandon Sullivan says, sorry. Connor says, White History Month. That's like your kids saying there shouldn't be a Mother's Day if there's no Kids Day. Ungrateful pricks.
Good point.
That's funny. Okay, Brandon, I'll read your tweet on another day. Another tweet on another day. Okay. By the way, again, Super Tuesday is tomorrow. Gigantic. TYTnetwork.com/live. And then on today's post game, not only are we going to do Anna's story, because we got a lot of post games pent up in us, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go raging about insurance. I got in a car accident. I'll tell you about it. And we're also going to have a funeral. Okay, that is going to be emblematic of my life. So it's a post-game extravaganza tonight at tytnetwork.com/join.
Sorry.
Okay, God bless.
It's taking me a while to get over,
Well, there's
stuff.
a coughing tradition on the Young Turks.
Yes.
Started and promulgated by me, so go forward.
All right. Leonardo DiCaprio finally won an Oscar for Best Leading Actor, but the point of him winning that award doesn't really matter to me. What matters is the speech that he gave when he accepted the award. Now, Leonardo DiCaprio is known for giving political statements when he's accepting awards, and this was no exception. He went up on stage and he used it as an opportunity to talk about climate change, something that a lot of our politicians don't even discuss during this election season. So here's what he had to say. Making the Revenant was about man's relationship to the natural world, a world that we collectively felt in 2015 as the hottest year in recorded history. Our production needed to move to the southern tip of this planet just to be able to find snow. Climate change is real. It is happening right now. It is the most urgent threat facing our entire species, and we need to work collectively together and stop procrastinating. We need to support leaders around the world who do not speak for the big polluters, but who speak for all of humanity.
Ah,
He's hot. What a stud.
He's hot, and so is the planet. And he's concerned about it. Okay. I love it. Again, it's an opportunity that is a once in a lifetime, oftentimes quite literally. And you can either use it to thank your agent, right? And he thanked plenty of people, right? Or you could use it for something positive in the world. So that drives conservatives crazy because they don't agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
But if Gary Sinise or Kelsey Grammer, or John Voight, I think those are literally the three conservative actors in all of Hollywood, had used that opportunity to go on a conservative rant, they would have loved it. They would have been nearly orgasmic. They might have made a president.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Ronald Reagan was, of course, an actor, and that was one of the few conservatives, and they did make a president. So, in this case, here's a guy who's saying, look, the powerful are not standing up.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually being too kind to them by saying procrastinating. They're not procrastinating.
They're doing exactly. I want to dispel the notion that they don't know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing.
That's right. And so he's saying enough of getting money from the big polluters. That I loved. There's also a great speech earlier in the Oscars talking about getting money out of politics.
Oh.
They're like, look, you can't. It was for the winners of The Big Short, the writers of The Big Short. They said, you can't fix the banking problems until you fix the people who are donating to the politicians. It's like, yes, right? So these are all the things that we've been talking about, and that actually would help the country enormously. And for them to be given this great platform is wonderful. And the rich and the powerful already have so many platforms, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's not like Leonardo DiCaprio is not rich, right? And for him to use his platform in this case to bring out a message on behalf of the powerless rather than the powerful was moving and perfectly appropriate.
Absolutely. And I have to give him credit because, look, he's not a political pundit. He is not, someone who has to comment on these things, right? I think that there are a lot of actors and actresses that stay away from political statements because it could harm them or hurt them in some way in the future, right? They're worried about losing endorsements or losing sponsors, maybe even losing certain roles because casting directors might disagree with their political statements. But when they make strong political statements like what Leo just did during his acceptance speech, you've got to give him credit because this isn't what he's doing for a job. He's doing it because he feels passionately about it. He wants to change it.
Yeah, and so I want people to understand and get the perspective. The big studios who run Hollywood are not liberals. They're in the money-making business, so hence more likely to be conservative, right? Lower taxes, yada, yada. But the actors are largely liberal. But the actors don't have as big a voice and have as much power as the big studios do. So in that moment, when they have that voice, it's great to see them use it for the benefit of more people, instead of the powerful.
Exactly.
So, and I'm going to give one last, what would appear to be a random shout out here, but it's not. It's to Tom Hartman, who is a really strong, great, smart, progressive talk show host who has been around a long time. And there are two people that he has had really good influence over. One is Leonardo DiCaprio. So
wait, he knows me?
Yeah, he knows him very well, and they talk about
hit him up. Like I love Tom Hartman, but I'll really love him if he gives me Leo's number. I mean, just so we can talk about politics.
Of course, just to talk about climate change.
I'm almost married.
Right, I know. Well, but your climate seemed to have changed a little bit there on Tom Hartman. Okay, we're talking about this. Okay, so he. Leonardo DiCaprio's heart and mind was already in the right place, but I think he did learn a lot from Tom Hartman. He says so, right? In what I've seen from that, and then Tom Hartman every week used to have one senator on, same senator, Bernie Sanders. Okay, so now people made fun of liberal radio never went anywhere, yada yada. Now Air America was liberal radio. You guys probably don't remember, but. The people that were on Air America, Rachel Maddow, #1 on MSNBC, Mark Maron, #1 podcast, Chuck D was on there, Liz Winstead was on there, creator of The Daily Show, us were #1 online news network, and Al Franken, who's now a United States Senator, right? So those people wind up having somewhat of an impact, but the guy who gets left out oftentimes is Tom Hartman. Mm-hmm. But that voice in the wilderness, it created a ripple effect, which then now is a tidal wave as we stand right now. So don't ever get discouraged. So as everybody was talking down liberal radio, saying you can't get anything done, all these different things that they said, Tom continued, and he was a strong progressive voice, and it made a difference. It made a difference many years later. Tom's still around, still does a great, great show, which you should check out. But look at the effect that he's had when no one was looking.
What you just said was beautiful, and I love it. But throughout the entire thing, all I could think about was how much I would lose it if Leonardo DiCaprio ever acknowledged me in any way. Like, if he retweeted a video that we did, I would lose my mind. I remember one time, as an idiot, I thought I got a tweet from Drake, but it wasn't Drake, it was someone who was posing as Drake.
Oh,
and
I like Drake the cupcakes or whatever.
No, I love Drake. And I retweeted it. I did a screenshot, put it up on Instagram, and then I was like, "Oh my god, it's not really Drake. I want to die." It's one of the worst moments of my life.
Okay, Leo, go ahead and make her lose her mind. Except there'll be 18 Leo imposters who are about to unleash that on you. All right,
okay,
let's move on.
All right. Lady Gaga was one of the performers during the Oscars, but she used that as an opportunity to speak about something that she went through herself at the age of 19, rape and sexual assault. Now, it became an empowering moment not just for Lady Gaga, but for a number of women who came up on stage as rape survivors to kind of stand in solidarity with one another. These are not people who know one another. These are people who have gone through similar situations, similar tragic events, and they came together, and honestly, the performance was beautiful. So we have a number of pictures of it. Unfortunately, we can't show you the video, but I'll explain what happened. Lady Gaga gave an emotional performance of her Oscar-nominated song, Till It Happens to You, from The Hunting Ground, a documentary about sexual assault on college campuses. Gaga appeared on the stage flanked by survivors of sexual assault and was introduced by Vice President Joe Biden, who urged viewers that changing a culture of sexual abuse is everyone's responsibility. What I particularly liked about Biden is when he came up there and he introduced Lady Gaga, he didn't specifically focus on female victims. He mentioned rape that impacts both men and women, and I think that's an important message to kind of send out there.
Yep.
So, it was great. Annie Clark, Andrea Pino, and Fabiana Diaz, they're all survivors of sexual assault and advocates for ending sexual violence. The three of them appeared on stage together with 48 other survivors of sexual assault. And they all had messages on their arms, kind of making statements about what they had gone through. Each of the survivors displayed different messages written on their forearms that said things like, "Not alone," "You're not at fault," and "We believe you."
Yeah, a lot of courage to stand up there and be seen in front of all those people as someone who's been attacked, and in the worst possible way. The males, the females, everybody up there. It's kind of a somber note, and I'm not much into musical performances. I always want to be like, let's fast forward through this.
Yeah.
Right?
But there was a point to this.
And it was very well delivered. And so sometimes Lady Gaga can be outrageous for the sake of being outrageous. That's only 99% of the time. But in this 1% of the time, she had a great message, and I'm glad she was strong enough to be able to deliver it in an effective way.
Yeah, look, I'm not a Lady Gaga expert, so correct me if I'm wrong about this. I think in the beginning of her career, it was 99% outrage. And then I think she realized, as she got older and matured a little bit, that, hey, you know what? I have this opportunity to raise awareness on issues that matter. So she was very aggressive when it came to, gay acceptance and making sure that, she pushed for gay rights. And now she's talking about rape and sexual assault, and I think that that's great. Now, there's a criticism, though, that I do want to bring up. I like that she is helping these women stand in solidarity for what they went through. I like that she's talking about something that a lot of people feel uncomfortable talking about. But she has worked with someone like R. Kelly, who is known to abuse underage women, right? Or girls. I should say girls, because that's what they were. And so that kind of sends a mixed message. And for those who have, kind of put out that criticism, I hear you and I agree with you. I don't know if Lady Gaga's ever going to talk about that or mention it, but I think she should.
Well, part of the problem here is the music industry is so dirty that it's hard to work with someone who doesn't have a problem, right? And I don't know why this industry developed in the way that it has. And I'm not just talking about things that are in the news. I've talked and had really interesting interviews with people who are in the music industry. And the culture is, if somebody's coming up, you take advantage of them, you sexually abuse them, and that's a par for the course. Remember that guy who with the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and
yes, I do remember
right,
that guy.
and then he ran away to Southeast Asia and is a male manager abusing other male singers. There's R. Kelly, there's Dr. Luke, there's an endless array of people, and it's always the same story. Part of the reason is obvious. In music, look, now I'm going to be a little bit biased, and you guys are going to get mad at me because I'm not a big music person. I get annoyed by the industry. But it's fairly random, especially this day and age, who makes it, right? Number one, because there's a lot of talented singers. Number two, these days, it's because you can auto-tune anyone, and they sound the same, right? It's mainly the production. I believe Dr. Dre could actually make me sound good. Okay? So since it's the luck of the draw, the people that are the producers or heads of the music labels, etc., have enormous power. And what do men usually use enormous power for? Oftentimes, unfortunately, they use it for their own sexual kicks, right? And so that's what happened in the music industry. It went unregulated for so long that it became commonplace. Well, it's way past time that it stopped being commonplace. I'm glad that they brought this up, no matter who Lady Gaga has worked with. But the people that really need to regulate themselves more than anyone is the music industry. So sing songs to yourself first. Clean up your own act, right? And then we should do it as a country. And I love that she brought it to the forefront. But I know who's up first. And it's definitely the guys in music.
Yeah. All right. I want to end on a happy note, a non-Oscars note. So I'm going to skip ahead to the story of the 90-year-old woman and the decision she made in her life. I think this brings up a really interesting conversation about what we would do at the end of our lives. Okay. A 90-year-old woman by the name of Norma has decided to forego cancer treatments in order to travel the world with her son and daughter-in-law. Now, she found out about her cancer diagnosis, uterine cancer to be specific, 2 days after her husband passed away. And so when she was given the option of treatments that you've heard of, whether it's chemo or radiation, she decided, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to hit the road and enjoy the rest of my life. So apparently after leaving, this is graphic number 43, after leaving northern Michigan in August, their first big stop was Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. From there, they traveled to Yellowstone National Park and then onto the Rocky Mountains. All the while, they've been documenting their adventure on the Driving Miss Norma Facebook page. So they're documenting it. It's kind of cool. One of her favorite experiences was a hot air balloon ride that her, kids gifted her. And she's enjoying herself. And interestingly enough, her family is saying that her health seems to have improved because she's not under as much stress. She's out there. She's traveling the world. She's enjoying her life. I mean, I'm sure that doesn't mean the cancer is going to go away, but...
And if it did, she'd be enormously lucky. Get treatment.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I say get treatment under normal circumstances. These are not normal circumstances. She is 90 years old. I pretty much love her for the decision she made. If she decided to, do chemotherapy, no problem with that. In fact, that's great too. If you have any chance of survival, under 99% of scenarios, please get treatment. Okay. Don't get deluded into thinking, if I go on a hot air balloon, it's going to magically cure itself. That's what Steve Jobs thought. That's why Steve Jobs isn't around anymore, right? Among many people who have unfortunately gotten that path. Now, putting that aside, okay, yes, the whole point is to enjoy life, right?
Yeah.
If I was 90 years old and I'm in her situation, I'm very likely to make that same decision, right? Instead of spending your last days in a hospital, undergoing this painful, exhaustive procedure, going around the country, they went whale watching in Florida. They saw all these wonderful places, these parks. I haven't gotten a chance to see some of those parks, and that's definitely the right way to go. But it's sad that it takes us being on the precipice of death to finally enjoy life.
Yeah, because look, as devastating as it sounds, it's because we know the end is near, and when we don't know the end is near, and when we're in the middle of our lives, the early stages of our lives, all you can think about is, what do I need to do to survive? What do I need to do to put a roof over my head? What do I need to do to find a job that's going to be decent? And so you're working, and you're in the middle of that, and it's hard to enjoy life. It's hard to be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go see Mount Rushmore. No, you're not, because you don't have time, right? And it sucks. And so, look, it's weird that it's going to the direction of like retirement accounts and things like that, but that's why it's so important to make sure things like Social Security are intact, to make sure that people at some point in their lives can retire and enjoy their lives, travel the world, do things that they were unable to do when they were working 40 hours, 60 hours a week. You see what I'm saying?
Of course. But look, there's different ways of enjoying life. I'm not unaware of our limited time on this planet. I don't know anyone who's more aware of it than I am, right? So, I even tweet out things in the middle of the night where people think I'm drunk or, whatever. And so one of the things I said recently was that the thing that's far more valuable than money is time. Because money you could use or misuse. It could be a very helpful tool. It can sometimes be counterproductive. And a lot of it is wasted, right? Whereas time is something that is very clear in its value. We all have a certain amount of time, and there is no ands, ifs, or buts about it. Every one of us has a number. That's the number of days we're going to be alive. Okay. All right. But look, it's like what I think about football teams. Like, some football teams love to turn it on in the fourth quarter. Yeah, dude, I know, but the first quarter is as important as the fourth quarter. Score a lot of points in the first quarter, right? So in our case, this day is just as important as the last day.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean let's all go to a hot air balloon, right? That's it. Let's get naked. Let's go streaking, right? For most people. Anyway, no, there are different ways to enjoy your life. Like, for example, I love doing this show, and I get fulfillment from when we accomplish things. When we knock down the big media players and we expose them for who they are, and we bring about change. For Wolfpack, there's nothing better than passing those resolutions and trying to fix our democracy. So I don't want to go on a hot air balloon. This is my time to do that, right? Yeah. So yes, you should do hot air balloons every once in a while. Yes, you should take your vacations and you should go to a wonderful national park.
I will.
Okay, yeah. I mean, not you, not this year, but I mean, generally, you guys, you should take vacations. Okay. Yeah. And you've got to find the right balance. There's different ways to enjoy every day. But one thing that is not optional, unfortunately, most people treat it that way, is getting the most out of every day. Because one day you're going to wake up and realize it was too late, right? So there are different ways to get the most out of life. But you should be cognizant of that and don't wait till, I've only got 6 months, right? So you've got the greatest gift. I know I'm hokey. I know I'm corny, right? But you've got the greatest gift ever. You exist and you know you exist. It's amazing. You didn't have to exist, but you do. Do something with it. Either do something fun with it or do something awesome with it. Create something. Whether it's, art that you're into or a job that you're into or a mission you're into, right? Go out there and conquer it. Make every day count. Because that's the most valuable resource you have. Okay, that's our hokey ending.
Yeah.
Okay. Great post-game coming up. Ironically, a funeral. Not for MSNBC. You'll see what I'm talking about. And then my rage against the insurance machines. And
let's keep it to your story.
Okay, all right.
For today.
It is plenty to go around, okay? TYTnetwork.com/join. And tomorrow's Super Tuesday, starting at 6 o'clock right here, okay? So make sure you're with us tomorrow. And that's it. Bye-bye.